Beautiful.
You look beautiful, man.
Excellent. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks. I just wanted to, first of all, obviously, I've known you, Ben, for quite some time, and in my journey through Utah, you've helped me out with a lot of things as well. And so I'm so thankful that you would take the time to sit down with us today and go through this. And my hope today is kind of start off this series of going through what personal trainers go through, and kind of because I know how much I learn from working with people, and I want to give the opportunity for other trainers and their experience to share for people who are looking to become a personal trainer, or even in your background where you went from being a personal trainer to starting up your own, what I consider a very successful business, and what you've been working on for basically the last 8 years, right? Or so.
We're going on 11 in December.
11 years?
Yeah,
See, that's how it goes.
Goes by fast.
Yeah, time does go by fast. Let's give the audience a little background where you're at currently.
Yeah.
And what you're working on.
Yeah. So, like you said, been doing this for a long time. I've been in the fitness industry almost since 2006, 2007. So is that almost 20 years? Close to it, 18 years. I've owned Epic Fitness now going on 11 years in December. Before that, though, I was a competitive athlete, so I didn't want to start a job or work or anything.
Yeah.
But if we want to go way back, I mean, I graduated college and I didn't want to go get a real job, so I kept trying out for the next thing, and the next thing at that point was bobsled. And so I competed internationally with the U.S. bobsled team for about 7 years almost, and from 03 to 09. But during that time, I kind of ran out of money. And it's a amateur sport, and you don't have big sponsorships. And so, but during that time, I knew I wanted to help other athletes. At the time, I thought I was going to, train pro athletes.
Sure. Yeah.
So we all think, right?
Yeah.
But got my first gig at the big box gym we both know and grew to love there for a little bit. That's kind of how it started.
So being a bobsledder, that's kind of unique, right? How did you even get into that field?
Yeah, great question, man. So I competed in track and field in college. I threw the javelin and the discus, and I had an elbow injury my last year, and I wanted to still compete and do things after my surgery and recovery. And one of the coaches was the decathlete coach. You remember Dan and Dave back in '92 Olympics? There was Dan and Dave.
And wait, so one of them didn't make it in, right? That was
one of them didn't make it in, but the guy who didn't make it in that was going to be the Dan and Dave, his name was Sheldon Blockberger. And he was one of our coaches. He was actually a great thrower too, because he was a decathlete.
Okay.
And he blew his knee before the Olympic Games in 90, I think it was 92 or 96. I can't remember. It was probably 92. Anyways, long story short, he got me interested in actually bobsled because I started training with the decathletes because I couldn't throw with my injury. So I started training with the decathletes. Like, man, you got some speed, not like world-class speed, but you could probably be a bobsledder.
Okay.
And so this was right after the 2002 games here in Salt Lake. And I had no idea what bobsled was. I didn't even watch it that year in the Winter Olympics. And I had no idea of what that meant. But they had an athlete recruitment tour going all over the country. And one of the stops was Long Beach, California. And I was at Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo. I'm like, this is like about a 2-3 hour drive down south. So me and a decathlete buddy of mine who were training together, we made a bet. We said, hey, we got 6 weeks to get ready for this combine. It's like a 4-item combine. Did a sprint, 60 meters, had to do a vertical jump, 5 consecutive hops. And
this combine was to make it on a team?
It was just to recruit talent.
Okay.
So they called it their athlete recruitment tour. And so the national team coaches, maybe some of the athletes on the national team were going to be out there for the summer camp, and just to figure out, let's find some people, because after the Olympics, there was a lot of bobsledders retired, right? So they were looking for new blood. So went there. I won the bet from my buddy. Had a little better, like they do, everything's timed and measured, and you get points for every item test.
Okay.
And actually, Steve Holcomb, he ended up winning the gold medal years later in 2010. He was there, and he actually asked me to come out to another camp in Lake Placid. So that's kind of how it started.
So wait, Steve Holcomb, who won the gold medal, what was it? He medaled in bobsledding then?
He won a gold medal in 4-man bobsled in 2010 in Vancouver.
Okay.
So in 2002, that was the summer of 03, he's the one that noticed me and invited me to the next camp, because he was just becoming a driver.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite the thing. Yeah.
So-
So that's random, right? Going from where you were just involved in track and field and then kind of randomly ending up on the bobsled team.
Yeah.
And what was that experience like?
Man, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was amazing. So that first year, I was actually an alternate of the U.S. team. So they picked like a team of 12, right? 12 guys, 3 sleds, and then there's an alternate. And I was like the sled dog, right? So you basically are doing all of like the menial tasks that actually mean a lot to the team. You're sanding runners, you're ready for be on the sled for if somebody got hurt, and that happened, right? So I ended up competing that year. But every single year that I competed from 03 to 09, there were challenges, right? Like when you get to that high level of competing as an athlete, there's like, it's hundreds of seconds, right? We're talking hundreds of seconds that go from gold to silver medals. And so in that experience, I got to travel all over the world, which was amazing. Got to go all over the place. I lived in Lake Placid for my first year and a half at the Olympic Training Center. I lived in Calgary, Alberta for the next 3 years because our strength coach was Canadian and he was our strength coach, right? So, but in order to like be seen or be looked at, you had to like live there. So I actually moved everything up there after college, and then that's what brought me to Utah. Actually, in 2006, after the Torino games, I didn't make the team that year, but my teammates and my driver were moving down here to train.
Okay.
So that's what
Did
brought
they
me to
open
Utah.
up a new facility or something? Or?
No, I mean they had. I mean everything here was already here from the O2 games, so it was already all here, and it made sense to come down here to train. So that's the only reason I came to Utah.
It's interesting. Knowing you personally, and you mentioned detail, like the way that you operate and the detail oriented that you are.
Yeah.
Right. And did you pick a lot of that up in that time, or did you feel you just naturally gravitated towards that? Because you just mentioned hundreds of seconds makes a difference in medal placing.
Yeah.
And then you talked about the conditioning of the equipment and how important that is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I could see you operate with that same mentality today.
Yes. I think, looking at my past, man, if you're talking about like sanding runners to like thousands grit, like using the smoothest sandpaper to make that stuff, make the runner as shiny as possible, to make it as fast as possible, that's your hundreds of seconds. I think in our world, in the business world, right, sanding the runner to perfection, like you're at a world championships or Olympic games, is very similar to like making sure that the gym is perfectly outfitted for the morning, right? And making sure that our team is all running the same SOP. We're making sure that like everything's documented, right? Because in the business, if you don't have that, then all your teammates aren't working in unison. So totally, I think, and being a team player, right? I was on a 4-man team for most of I did 2-man, but I mainly did 4-man. In 4-man, one person makes a small mistake, none of you are getting in the sled, right?
Yeah.
And
with
so
like an entry or
like getting
has a stumble, right?
Yeah, I've had those before, but that's the thing is like you're one piece of many, and if you aren't doing your job, then the whole team will suffer.
And so you are taking a lot of those lessons then, and you talked about your current facility, Epic Fitness, right? And you translate that over. But I know a lot of times the personal training field is filled with ex-athletes who look to say like, oh, I'm in good shape.
Yeah.
I can teach someone else how to work out.
Yep.
And as we know, that's not really how it plays out, right? So how difficult is it for you to find the right pieces as far as employees to fit within that mold? Or if you find someone that has more of the athletic skill and ability, are you able to coach them enough to get them to that level?
I'll answer the second part of that question first because we're actually dealing with that right now.
Okay.
We have like an Olympic hopeful that's working with us that's come out as a personal trainer. He's a skeleton athlete. He's an amazing athlete, track and field guy, and he's an amazing kid. He's, mid to late 20s, but he has zero experience. So he's green, right, as a personal trainer, but he has a certification. He has a passion for this. So the hardest part about training somebody like that is basically they know how to move, right? He moves flawlessly, fluently, and people want to look and move like him. I want to look and move like him because he moves so well. But how do you translate to like teaching a client, right? Mm-hmm. And so for him, he has to learn how to, and this is what we're teaching, is what we teach all of our coaches, but how to learn how to take that masterful movement and actually show it to a client in a way where they can show it, we call right, wrong, right, right? You do the right way. You show the biggest fire you don't want to see, and then you show it right again. So they get to smash the right, and they get to see both parts of the right.
Okay.
And so for him though, it was like, this is how you do a squat. Boom, 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 boom. Do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that like, I'm like, that's not how we coach here. And so just a training of that, and he's got it now, right? So he's been on so just over a month, and he understands like, yeah, not everybody moves like me. This is different. Like not everybody's an Olympic or like hopefully or an athlete like me have this experience. So it's just that. So we have a lot of systems in place where we're like, okay, we got to give specific positive feedback. We got to give specific praise or specific like constructive feedback in the session. It has to happen. You've got to ask the questions, right? Like, you know, you have a few more in the tank. Like, how were you feeling during that set? What did you feel? Like all these questions that intuitively, this guy knows, like, I'm doing an RDL, a deadlift. I know my hammies, my glutes are working, but I'm not asking the client. It's in their low back or whatever.
Right.
But sorry, to go back to answer that part of the question, it's a challenge. It can be a challenge. It was a challenge for me. I look back when I was a green trainer, right? Like brand new, I'm like, just do it like me, like look like this.
Right.
But it doesn't work that way. You got to meet people where they're at, right? Meet the client where they're at and where they're at physically, know exactly the limitations, and also know kind of how to upgrade, downgrade the movement pattern to fit their ability level.
Well, and another thing that I learned obviously was how different people learn.
Yes.
And that feedback system. Some they need that visual feedback. Some can use their kinesthetic and awareness just to figure it out.
Yeah.
Some can just mirror you very well.
Yep.
So, what are some of your approaches there with your clients? Is there a way that you try to assess that?
Yeah, great question. And I think the best way I can answer that and how we coach our coaches to coach our clients is going to be, we try to get every way, right? We call it tell, show, do. So it's like when they tell the client, like, you know, obviously this is a movement. This is why we're doing it. The show is like the right, wrong, right, showing the pattern. And then do is like, we're going to do it. We might do it together, or I'm going to have you do it. Then I'll give you feedback, and we'll get feedback there. Obviously, if there are red flags, we'll jump in there and like obviously stop it and reset it or whatever. But we like the tell, show, do method. That works really well for us in those instances of like actually having to coach a brand new movement for somebody. But what we found is most people will visually want to see what it looks like, the right way, the wrong way. Show me the right way again, and then let's do it together, or let's do it.
So, does your training facility take a similar approach? You mentioned team, and you talked about the bobsled team. Now we know there's a driver. I know that much. I know there's some pushers on the side, and usually you have your biggest power guy right in the back, right?
Yeah, your fastest guy usually. Yeah,
fastest guy.
Yeah.
So you have different people, 4 different people in this instance, with typically different skill sets, and who become highly specialized in that. But together, they hopefully win these medals.
Yeah.
Now, with your team, you just mentioned you have a young, high Olympic hopeful athlete. Do you have different team members that make your operation work similarly? Like you leverage those strengths? Is that kind of your approach there as well?
Yeah, I think sometimes it happens on accident. Like we have one of our coaches, he's like our head coach, head program design guy. He's been with us for almost 7 years now. So he's kind of grown into this role over the years. Okay. But what's cool about his strengths is he loves playing golf, right? And he's doing everything golf. So he has all the golf certifications known to man.
Okay.
So he's our rotational guy. So he helps with lacrosse. He helps with golf. Any rotational sport he can help with. We have a gal that's been doing nutrition for like 20 years. So we're leveraging her nutrition, her abilities to like take on clients that need extra nutritional help. That's awesome. We have a coach that's getting her master's degree. The last couple of years, she's getting her degree in counseling, like basically like mental health. Mm. And so she did our latest 6-week little New Year's challenge, all about like mindset and like psychological structures of the mind. And I'm like, that's amazing. So to have these people that just, I wouldn't say by default, but like kind of by accident, they have all these different pieces that they can bring to it, but we're able to leverage that in a way of like, hey, like Katie, you're going to be like the go-to for nutrition stuff. This is awesome. And then Kim, like she's our amazing like mental health, you know, she knows how to talk to people, and she's doing that stuff every day, right? With her graduate program. Mitch is, you know, our head coach. He's super amazing at like just getting to know the internal parts of what the client's thinking and feeling, and then being able to like put it on paper or put it in a program, right? A digital plan for them. So I think that like when we look to hire, we're not like exactly looking for that, but then once they tell us that they have this internal belief or thing that they want to focus on or work on more, like we're going to let you shine with that, and figure out a way to, if it's a program that we're going to run, like, or whatever it is, like give them the opportunity to run it or do it.
Okay.
So,
And it sounds like you have a pretty well-balanced, well-oiled machine going right now.
yeah.
When you started off, did you even envision that you were going to be able to do that? What was
Nope.
your thought initially?
No, I mean, you remember when I started off, I mean, we were, independent contractors, and that's how it had to be. Right. And that's the deal we signed at a big box gym. And as an independent contractor, I was getting to the point after a couple of years where I couldn't grow anymore of just training the clients on my own. Even going from like, most of us, go from like private training to maybe training someone and their friend. Mm-hmm. But
so talk a little bit about, because that's important.
Yeah.
I think I have an idea where you're getting at, but I'd like the audience to be clear with that, is that effectively you only have so much time.
Yeah. And
if you're looking to increase your revenue, it becomes $1 per hour versus availability. So touch on that a little bit. What did you figure out?
Yes.
And what led you to opening up the business and going in this other direction?
Yeah. So for my first 2 to 3 years, almost 4 years, I was doing one-on-one private training, and for one-on-one private training, this is what a day looks like. You wake up at 4 a.m., you get to the gym at 5, you train your 5, 6, and 7 a.m. clients. You have a break from maybe 8 to 10. You train somebody from 10 to 11. By that time, you're really hungry. You go in the back, eat your Tupperware, eat your lunch from 11 to 11:15, because you got to go back out there at 11:30 and do whatever, right? And then you get to go home for a couple hours and sleep. But then from 3 until 8 p.m., you've got your one-on-one clients. So you're serving like 8, maybe if you're lucky, 6 to 8 different people in a day. And that's an amazing day, right? But it took you 16 hours to do that, 8 hours of service. As you know, like we've been there, like that's just not the life I wanted to live, but also it wasn't making sense for me, not only financially, like it was okay financially, you're making okay money doing that, you're charging a lot for one-on-one services, but you weren't impacting a lot of people. So for me, it was like, okay, how can I impact more people and serve more people? And also, make the price even more affordable for the client, right? Because they're going to share the cost when they come into what we call more semi-private or small group training.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So real quickly, like your $1 per hour that you charge, usually trainers who become more and more proficient, they start to increase that, right, to show their value. But then in turn, what starts to realistically happen, depending on what area code you're in, your potential base for customers starts to dwindle.
Yep.
And it becomes more highly competitive. So you found a way to deliver the level of training you wanted to deliver, still hit the revenue figures you're looking to hit, but make it more cost affordable for your clients and increase your base, right? Your potential base.
Increase the base of clients and increase your hourly rate, effective hourly rate for sure. Because if I could train one person for, let's say, my cap at that's going to be $150 an hour probably right now. That's what I could charge probably one-on-one and get that in this kind of market. But if I could charge 4 people $70 an hour each, let's do the math, right? 7 times, that's $280 an hour. So I've effectively almost doubled my hourly rate. Mm-hmm. So as a personal trainer, like that's what I'd recommend first is find a way where you can actually like structure it in a way where you can actually train people in a semi-private or a small group setting. How do you do it? The way I did it was I double booked people on accident, on purpose, right? But on accident. Susie and Paula, oh my gosh, you guys came in the same hour. God, that was my mistake. I'm so sorry. Would you guys mind just training together today? And then give me feedback on how you liked it, because this was totally my mistake, but let's give it a shot. That's how it started out, right?
Okay.
And then you go to a really good seminar, right? Or you go to continuing education. You learn about this stuff. What I did is I came back and I said, hey, to my clients, I went to this really amazing seminar. I learned this new method of training where actually they found that you're going to get better results in less time and with more community involvement of peers around you. And what we found is like people that are connected together and have that extra accountability see better results. I'd love to do for this month only, or this week only, or this day only is just test it out with you and 1 or 2 other people. Would you like to test it out? Just give me your feedback. Let me know how you like it. And by the way, it's going to cost more than half less than what you were paying.
Okay.
Kind of like that idea. Or I'll give it a shot. Or like people that were really, really one-on-one and didn't want to do it. It's like, no, I'm good. Like, cool. I'll honor that deal that I kept with you. And then when you're up for your whatever pack renewal, because we were doing session by session services back then, you can decide if you want to keep going or not. That worked out the best for me. I mean, I'm looking at if somebody's looking to transition in that. But what I wouldn't recommend is continuing to do one-on-one, or if you're looking to grow your business and if you're looking to make more impact or help serve more people, because you won't make the impact that you're maybe built to be able to make.
Yeah. So you had this epiphany and you kind of realized that, and then you started to go out on your own. First, you were still training in the big box gym with that same mindset.
Yes, and I actually got to train in the big box gym and test it out in there for about March of 13 till December. So almost a year. So like about 10 months. Okay. I did it. Yeah.
And then you made the transition out.
Yeah.
What were the first steps like? Were you tentative about that? Obviously you're excited, but kind of walk us through what you remember that time period.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't my decision to move out. If it was my decision, I would have gone when I was really, really clearly ready. Because like you said, I like to plan. I'm very detail oriented.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, maybe I can do this in like the next 5 years. But like 5 years prior to that, I had opened up a storage unit, 10 by 15. And I just bought equipment, and I found all these deals. And I'm like, one day I'll open a gym, right? Well, I wasn't planning on opening a gym anytime soon. I was pretty happy where I was at. But at the big box, I couldn't, I tried to ask. I couldn't hire another employee. I couldn't hire a coach. They wouldn't allow that, right? I couldn't go beyond training more than 4 people at a time. They actually wouldn't allow that. I was teaching classes, and that was part of the breakup, was classifying personal training as training for less than 4 people per hour. And they wanted to let me sign a new agreement on that, and a new, radius, like a non-compete radius.
Okay.
And I said, I will abide to my current agreement. And the owner didn't like that and kicked me out 2 days before Christmas Day. So that's like, it was like
Christmas, you filthy animal.
Well, it was actually the best thing that ever could happen to me, because it was hard. Yes, it was really hard, but it was the best thing, because I wouldn't have jumped on my own. Like, I wouldn't have jumped on my own until I was ready, which maybe never would have happened. Who knows? Because I was just comfortable, right?
Yeah.
I think sometimes the lesson here is like, sometimes when you're comfortable, maybe look to get a little uncomfortable, or think of ways in which you get uncomfortable, because I wasn't uncomfortable enough to make the move.
Yeah.
And when I got that put on me to sign this thing, and I just said, I can't do it, like I really can't, because it'll hamper my ability to actually have business in the future. Because I got pushed out, it was like, okay, now it's go time. Like, I have to do something.
Yeah.
And that time, you remember this, Eric, like I had a 1-year-old, and my wife was almost 8 months pregnant.
Yeah.
So, it was one of those things where, well, what happened was December 23rd, got booted out. December 24th, let my clients know I wasn't taking sessions after Christmas. December 26th, went and looked at places to a lease. December 27th, signed a lease. December 28th, I think that's Friday or Saturday that week, right? Because middle of the week is when all that happened. I got the keys and then moved in Friday, Saturday, Sunday, opened the gym on Monday, the 30th or 29th or 30th. So before the first of the year, we had opened the gym. And I'm saying this not to impress anybody at all, but just to impress upon you, the art of being prepared, right? So for me, preparation, being prepared with I knew I wanted to make the move, but I didn't know when. So I had all the equipment, right? I had the basics for having a gym open up and be able to serve my 50 or so members that I had at the time. Being prepared was number one. Also, the saying "jump and the net will appear." I kind of was forced to jump, and I was free falling, and then poof, there's the net, right? The net was going to be there. I just had to trust the net was there. I didn't trust it before, but I had to have that little push and shove in my back. It really helped force that, to build that safety, Also, when you're in a position where your back's up against the wall, you don't know what the heck to do, and you don't not sure if any member is going to follow or join you.
Right.
That was one of my biggest fears. I'm like, oh, this person needs daycare, and this person needs that, and that person's going to definitely stay there. And I was like, I was wrong. Like almost 95% of the people followed me. The 5% that didn't had daycare, like serious, like they had to have the kids there because they were babies or whatever. The daycare they provided over there. But besides that, like we kept almost every member, which was really cool. Yeah. So that was like my fun week back then.
Can you even, I know now it's, you kind of laugh about it or you were thankful for it because where you're at, but can you even go back at all to that time period and remember like what the feelings of anxiety was? You've got a 1-year-old, you've got your wife pregnant, and now you're having to find a source of income. And within 5 days, you were able to open the doors back and start driving income again.
Yeah.
But what was that initial thought when you were going through that contract discussion? Like how close were you to making the agreement that you ended up just saying like you couldn't abide by, that you didn't want to sign?
Yeah.
Were you close to that?
I was close to saying yes. Or,
were you close to saying that? Yes.
Well, I was, I showed it to a lawyer, right? Because I'm like, do I have to sign this, right?
Yeah.
And the advice the lawyer gave me, thank God, was no, because you already have an agreement in place and they can't give you addendum after addendum after addendum and be legal. But if I hadn't got that advice, I probably would have been forced to sign it, or thinking like, if I'm going to stay here, I've got to sign this, right?
Right.
I didn't think there was another option. At first, I didn't think there was another option. I was asking the other trainers, like, will you guys sign this? Like, yep, I already signed it yesterday. I'm like, oh, geez, okay. Just like in my heart of hearts, I don't think I could have signed it and been okay with like knowing that they kind of had me in a position where I would have been, not able to do my own thing if I wanted to.
Well, you would have been literally stuck, right? A non-compete radius clause like that.
Yeah.
There's a reason why gyms put that in there specifically to not lose clients and to be able to take you to court over making that decision or going to a different area.
Right.
And that's detrimental because you're dealing with a smaller base, right? I mean, now how many people are you working with? You keep talking about, what is the word you like to say? It's not servicing. Is that what you say? Like as far as the people that you like to work with, being able to work with clients, you keep saying the word, I think it's servicing. You can service more people or help more people.
Yeah. Just that we can just help serve more people, right?
Serve
like,
more people.
Yeah.
So what is your current base about?
We have right around, we have 215 members at Epic, and then we have a corporate wellness account. We help about 70-ish people, another client base. Offsite, we built like a 5,000 square foot gym at a facility offsite. Okay. So all in all, almost 300 people.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you went through that. Let's go back to the early days. So you're working at your place. You opened it up the beginning of the year, right? December 30th, basically right at the end of the year. Where are you at? What was the first steps you did? And when you realized, okay, you have enough clientele to maybe support yourself, pay some bills and do what you need to.
Yeah.
But then you identified that you were ready to grow or you needed to grow. What were the next tools, the next things that you sought out to do to help you get to that stage?
Yeah, great question. So I'll go like almost a year before that, 9 months before that, I joined a mastermind group. I joined a group of like-minded entrepreneurs in fitness businesses that supported me along the way. And even my mentors were like, you got a really good deal here, right? At the big box gym. I wouldn't leave if I were you. Like that was some of the first advice I was getting. And then when the contract stuff happened, like, yeah, you should probably find a way to get out of there. But I got advice from people who had been there and done that, or been in similar shoes of mine before they had opened up their facilities. And this is a group of like probably 80 to 100 fitness business owners that I got to like tap into. So that was March of 13, 9 months before I made the jump. Fast forward to January of 2014, when I actually opened the gym. I had that support and that mastermind mentorship that I was a part of. I had support of our clients because they were starting to be like, I want to support this guy. So like they referring friends, family, spouse, whatever. I think the hardest part when you first open a brick and mortar gym is your thought of like, people are just going to walk in the door and want to join.
Right.
That's not the case.
Yeah.
So, we had to get really tactical with like how we were going to like let people know we even exist. Right. So a lot of it was like, how do we build a network? How do you network with people? I got with Mill Creek City because now I'm in a new city now. So I got with Mill Creek City, just let them know I'm here. Did a ribbon cutting, did like little things like that to like let the community know we're here and let the city announce it in a way where they're like, oh, Epic Fitness, like there's at least a name right out there. So we started with just like networking, business to business networking. I did a lot of that. So we had like chiropractor, physical therapists that were members, right? That we made sure that they knew whatever our offer was, that they were actually, letting their clients know. But also we were handing cards out like hotcakes to people that needed that.
Yeah. So it was like a boots on the ground approach. Was it primarily yourself, or did you tap some other people? Obviously, at first it was yourself.
Yeah, at first it was myself. It was sun up to sundown myself for the first probably 6 to 9 months. But then I had my first hire. For me, what worked really well with my first hire was an admin, like an admin assistant. Okay. I need somebody administratively to help with like paperwork, the contracts, all those things. The things that I had to still make money, personal training, and that's how we made the income, right? So I knew that was super important. So I needed to hire somebody to do the other stuff. And so it was a client, right? And this client was like, I'll help you with whatever. And so she worked like 15, 20 hours a week to start. That was before we even hired our first coach. And I feel like if I could give any advice, like try to hire somebody that's going to be different than you. Or if you're in a partnership, right? Like don't have the same skills. Don't like 2 personal trainers starting a business, probably a big mistake. Because you want somebody to have more of a vision and then maybe have somebody be more the implementer of like whatever the business is, right? Have more of a visionary, then have more of an implementer, and then that can coincide or coexist. What you can't have is 2 people with like the very exact same skill set, because then that's when you start to bump heads and that sort of thing. Like I don't have any investors, or I don't have any I don't have any partners. But at the same time, when I hire, I think about that. I'm like, how similar are their skills to mine? Or how much can I get out of somebody that's like we talked about earlier, right? Like all of our people have different interests that I don't have, like that expertise in mental health, or I don't have that expertise in nutrition or in rotational sports, but I can pull from them and we can really utilize it.
Yeah. One thing we talk regularly about, like on our things in our broadcasts and what we see often over and over again, was initially the idea that was passed around was to work on your weaknesses and become more proficient, but well balanced and better rounded, which there's a degree to that depending on how deficient you are in some areas.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to working and building a business, it seems the individuals I sit down with that have the most success are the individuals that identified their strengths and honed in on those and then hired people to fill in just like what you talked about.
Their weaknesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And make it a better, well-rounded team, right?
Yeah.
You can't have everyone be the driver of the bobsled.
Right. I want to +1 that and say you definitely want people to fill in your weaknesses. You also want to work on some of your weaknesses if it's something you want to work on, but at the same time, like I don't want to do paperwork or admin stuff all day long. So, and also the best way to think of this is like from a dollar per hour perspective, like we were talking about earlier, right? As a business owner, think business hat on, would you hire somebody to do the $15, $20 per hour work when you could be doing the $200 to $300 to $500 an hour work? Like, would that make sense? Yes. Like I would want to hire for that sort of thing. So delegating and hiring for people that can actually do that work, that can make a good living still, or make a good rate, hourly rate, but it's not something that like you want to be tasked with doing. That took me a little bit longer to figure out, right?
Really?
My first 6, 9 months. And I'm like, yeah, I can hire somebody and they can make a good hourly rate. That's respectable rate for the job they're doing. And it's hours that I get back, right? And so I think like as a business owner, you're doing the stepping stone, like you're doing stepping stones, and basically like all you're trying to do is basically fire that last version of you and hire the next person that can do the work, right? And so by the end of it, you've actually hired out every part of your business to where now you're not doing nothing, but now you're doing the highest leverage activities that will bring you the most bang for your buck. or you can go do the next thing, right? The next investment or the next project, but you actually have the time and the space to do that, and you not have to work so much in the business.
So you just said the highest leverage activities as far as I'm assuming meaning the growth and the revenue of the business, right?
Yeah, I think growth, revenue, working on outside projects that could still impact the business, right? So like I just got down from a meeting upstairs here where I met with the director here at the club where we're going to do like a networking event next month. We're going to get like probably 200 to 300 people in here to just do a mixture, like just a community building event, but we're also going to have a charity component to it. But if I was still on the floor 40 hours a week, like I couldn't even think about doing something like that, right? Like something bigger that would be bringing more of an impact to the community. So like that kind of stuff, right? Or like I'm thinking about a second location south of here. Like what would that look like? Running a business plan in my head or putting it on paper, like actually taking the time to develop systems and strategies and SOPs that our team can like really utilize to grow.
So how do you target those things? Did you sit down? Did you game plan? Like, did you really look at, how do you make those decisions? For you, was it just organically that you started to figure these things out from being a new business owner?
Yeah.
Or did you tap into that mastermind class you said, who gave you some coaching and said, look, these are the areas where you excel. These are the things that are determining what drives your business. Here's are the things that you need to take on. Here's are the things that you need to find the additional help for.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of going from like my education was reading all of the fitness and being the best in fitness I could be. So you're reading all your continuing education with fitness and certifications and advanced certifications, all the things, right? We got all the alphabet soup after her name. And then it turned into, okay, now I'm going to read like all of the business books, all the ones that I get recommended by our business mastermind groups. And I started reading all the business books. I'm like, okay, this is how I have to worry about accounting and like, all the things that are important in a business, right? For me. So I started out by just pulling all that information in, but I did get resources from the groups I'm in where they were like, okay, I would suggest you start here. It wasn't like very prescriptive, but it was like, we found the best business owners that are in your kind of where you're starting right now, or however many members you have. We recommend the next hire should be this. Or based on the last 100 business owners that own a fitness business have done this and been successful. I'm like, well, they've been there, they've done that. I'm going to give that a shot. But yeah, like you said, it wasn't as prescriptive as it may sound, but they were like, in our experience, this works, right? Maybe give it a try.
And so from there, it was pretty much just like, you've got it all figured out. You hired your admin person and boom, 8 years later, you're wildly successful, right? Isn't that how it goes?
Yeah, no.
We'll talk this a little bit then about now that you at least got some footing, you got someone to help you, and you're starting to build out maybe some of the more milestone moments, like as far as either setbacks or successes and how those came about. Yeah.
I'd say our first success was actually hiring our first coach. I remember our first hire of a new coach. It was exciting for me because I'm like, wow, like I don't have to train every person every hour, right? Mm-hmm. And we took an internship, right? And the internship had a University of Utah graduate and a BYU graduate, and I took them both in. And after 6 weeks, right, it was an internship they had to do. So I got to put together the whole curriculum. It was super exciting because I got to put together the whole curriculum and get these two amazing people in for 6 weeks. It was an unpaid internship, so I wasn't allowed to pay them because they got the educational piece out of it. But what I got out of it was basically a 6-week hiring. Like we got to interview them for 6 weeks, basically. So I'd recommend it. Like if you're, and right now I've heard the National Academy of Sports Medicine, the NASM actually contacted me recently, and they have what they call a gym-turnship internship.
Okay.
Basically, like they have a program where people that just get certified, they have 80 hours of an unpaid internship where they can come to your gym for 80 hours and you do the curriculum, you put it all together, they get the hours, and then you can decide whether to hire them or not, right? You don't have to force to hire them or anything. But going back to my internship, it was 6 weeks long. I think it was close to 140 hours. And at the end, I loved them both. I hired them both. And so that's what really springboarded me to be able to step off the floor and be able to do market more, be able to do more reach outs and be able to make those connections in the community or pull personal connections just to build rapport over the business. things that we never have time for, right? Like the email marketing, the social media stuff. I mean, we at that point, 2014, 2015 was pretty big for Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
You could throw an ad out there and get people calling right away. It's different than now. So we leveraged that sort of stuff. But I'd say when we hit 100 members, I remember it was probably in 2015ish. So within like a year and a half to 2 years of being open, we doubled our membership, which was a huge milestone for us. What that meant is like, if we got 5 or 6 new members every month, at that time was pretty good for us. We weren't losing anybody, or maybe we were losing 1 or 2 members per month. So we were actually being able to, our attrition was so much lower than our new member intake coming in that we just started to grow, and it just started to kind of, snowball that way. So I'd say the first milestone was hitting 100 members. I thought, oh man, I was like 70, 80 members. I'm like, when I get to 100, then I'll be happier. When I get to 100, then I'll have enough money to like do the next thing. Or when I get to 100, whatever the thought was, I'm like 100 was like the magic number.
Yeah.
I'm like, when I get to 100, I can retire, right? No, it didn't work that way. But when we got to 100, we had more ability to hire good talent.
Okay.
We had more ability to just do a lot more with inside our 4 walls. But also during that time, I'll give a quick setback. Gosh, before we hit 100 members, it was during the whole crisis of just opening the gym. It was January 14th, 2014. So basically like 2 weeks within opening, my mom had a massive stroke. Oh. And she's in California. And I basically got a call from my sister, like, mom's like on her deathbed, basically, like, you got to fly out here. Like, shit, I just opened this gym like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I had to close the gym for like 5 days. So I went out there and she survived. She's doing great now. But it was one of those moments where I'm just like, none of this really matters, right? Like, I mean, it matters, but like not compared to like my mom, right? Yeah. Being like close to dying. And I knew the importance of going out there and seeing her. And that was nuts, man, because literally a month later we had our second boy, Roman. And
let's go back to this. So
yeah,
there's just so much in a short time.
I know, man.
I didn't even realize. So
yeah, it was a lot happened.
The big transition, the forceful transition, the stress of making that decision, having a 1-year-old, now going out and putting this together and thinking the hours and the stress that's involved with that. Then within that time period, getting the note, or shortly thereafter, getting the notification about your mother and having to close down again, and then having the birth of another son come in that time period. Like, how did you make it through that?
I don't remember really. It was kind of a blur, actually. I'd have to ask my wife, but I think what got us through it was literally like I tend to say this saying a lot, and I think I said it a lot back then. It's like, I think of like, if I were to lose in life, what would I have to do? Or if I were to like, stop or like fail, I tend to tell myself, and I say this a lot, I'm like, I cannot fail if I do not quit, right? So like as a mantra for me, I think it was like, okay, I have to close the gym down for a few days because I've got to go see my mom, but I cannot fail. I cannot keep this shut down if I do not quit and come back and just, bring it, to the best of my ability. So I think the mantra for me is like, I can't fail if I don't quit. If I quit, then I fail, right? That's as simple as that. So it was like in sport too, man, like in bobsled, we didn't really talk much about the bobsled experience, but like I got to compete in world championships the year before the Olympics. And then I did not get to compete in the Olympics because it was based on hundreds of seconds of race-offs and all this stuff that happened. But I never quit. Like I always gave it everything I could. And I knew that I could never label myself as a failure or, failing because I never stopped.
That's right. A huge thing to say, a huge statement. You're looking at yourself or seeing yourself as a failure and not allowing that to be something that happens. Where does that come from?
I don't think I could say I was born with it. My father growing up was pretty strict. My parents divorced when I was like 10, 11 years old. And I spent a lot of time with my dad. When our family split up, I was living with my dad mainly, and I'd spend time with my mom. It was however that worked out. But my dad was one that almost didn't force things on me, didn't say, you're going to be, But in athletics, it was like he didn't allow me to quit. When things were going rough, right? If I was playing basketball, I'm like, man, I'm not getting playing time. This sucks. Like, I'm going to quit. He's like, well, guess what? It's the first part of the season. You ain't quitting. Like, it was kind of ingrained in me, like, yeah, you know what? You're right. Like, I can't just like quit at something without finishing it, right? Or without finishing the season, or without finishing whatever it was. And so, like, the little story from high school was, I had a love for basketball. I loved basketball, and I played all the way through my junior season. But that junior season, I was the 20-20-20 guy, one of like 4 or 5 guys. Head coach came in, he's like, hey, you made the team, but you're like the 20-20-20 guy. I'm like, what's that? You play, if there's 20 seconds left, you're up 20, you're down 20. I'm like, yeah. So I was basically warming the bench, but I gave it my all. I never quit. Like in practice, I was the fastest one on the suicide drills, right? Running back and forth on the court. I always made sure I sprinted to the finish. I won those. What that turned into, my dad had a blood clot. He was fine, survived, but he was in the hospital like a couple nights. And I remember going up to him after the basketball season, and like,
this is when you were like 16?
High school. So 17, like between my junior and senior year. And I'm like, Dad, like, I don't think I could go play basketball. Like, I know I probably will earn like a starting spot my senior season, but after that junior year I had, I'm like, I want to control my own destiny. And he's like, you know, where you can control your own destiny is basically like not in a team sport. Nothing against team sports, but if you want to control your own destiny, do it in an individual sport. Try track and field. Never done track and field in my life. I'm like, okay. But it was a couple of days in the hospital I spent with them.
So wait, you went from basketball, and that's when you got into discus and javelin?
Yeah, I didn't actually compete in any track and field at all till my senior season of high school. So 1 year. I was a one and done guy my last year of high school.
Okay. And that's when you had the injury then too.
No, I didn't have the injury till college, but
Okay.
yeah. I'm going back a little bit to just the quitting part, right? Like, so that summer between my junior and senior year of high school, like that was probably going back to like never quitting. I learned in the weight room that if I stayed an extra 30, 40 minutes, I'd be stronger than the next guy. Or if I stayed on the track for an extra hour, I'd have better technique at the start than the next guy. And so I ended up, being one of the faster guys because I ran relays and I sprinted 100, 200 meter sprints. And I never thought that it was possible, right? Like, I would have never thought I was going to make a track team and make state meets and all this stuff in high school after 1 year of training or less than 1 year of training. But it changed. Like, sometimes I think when you change your body or you change your mind on something, you change your physical body, you change your mental and, the spiritual, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. It has a big difference. So that was the year that I made a change in my body where I went in like probably, tall as I am, right? 6'2" or whatever I am height wise, $175, maybe wet, just tall, gangly guy. And I got to go in the weight room and I trusted my coach, my strength coach. That summer I gained like 25, 30 pounds. I came out like 205 on the other side of it. And I'm just like, people didn't even recognize me. Like, who's this guy? I'm like, I've just been strength training every day with the track coach.
Yeah.
And that was like, for me, that was like an identity shift into who I was going to become, was someone who wasn't going to quit and could just, and that was like when I made the shift from, I think it was a similar shift from going from track and field to bobsled. Very similar, like athletic qualities, right? You had to be able to sprint fast, get off the block, hit a heavy sled and, sprint for 30 meters and jump in.
Yeah. And
be fast and athletic and agile. Those qualities, so I guess going back junior year in high school, if those things didn't happen, if I wasn't the 20-20-20 guy, I never would have been able to travel to Europe and compete in world championships in an amazing sport like that.
So facing that adversity developed who you are now. But you talk about the physical attributes and obviously the changes you went through physically, but you kind of note and point out that it was really the mindset that developed the body.
Yeah.
And so like I talk about, and I've kind of realized even at this point in my life that emulating the characteristics of the person that you want to become now.
Yeah.
And it seems like you figured that out at a young age.
I probably figured it out at a young age, but I didn't know that was what it was.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I think I figured it out more recently of like, like you said, like the identity shift of like, what is the person you want to become? And then almost act as if that person, or act in accordance with like asking yourself almost daily. I do this a lot. I'm like, if I'm going to still continue to work out and be healthy, it's like I have to ask myself, like, what would a healthy person do? What would what would a healthy, fit father do? Right? Because my kids are 11 and 10 now. I still want to beat them out on the track. I want to race them out on the field or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think to myself, like, would I skip a workout today? No, a healthy, fit father wouldn't skip a workout today. Like, and that's the identity shift, right? So I think like during our athletic careers, it's like, what would a kid, a first year bobsledder do to make a national or an Olympic team, right? I'd show up every day. I'd be there 30 minutes early. I'd be standing the runners before anybody got there. I'd be the last one to leave. I'd be, waxing that sled, getting it ready for the race day when no one else saw it or even noticed it, but they knew I was there afterwards because, someone showed up and they're like, what are you still doing in the sled, garage or whatever. But I love like the thought of, I probably was practicing that early on, but I wasn't realizing like now I consciously am aware of like, questions I could ask like my 85 or 90-year-old self. I like to talk to that person. Have a conversation with that person. I think that's a good exercise to do, right? It's like, what if you could talk to your 90-year-old self and be like, man, I'm really stressed right now. Business is really tough, or like all these things have happened in my life. And then you get to talk to your 90-year-old self and they're like, hey, looking down at you right now, you're looking pretty good. Like, you don't have that many things to worry about, like time's on your side sort of thing. If you look from that perspective, I think it could be useful. So I think like having that ability to be able to like, if I looked ahead 40 years and like pull back the curtain a little bit, and like, I think if we think in more of like, not just days or weeks or months, and we think of like, thinking decades, like what could the next decade look like if I did this action every day? That behavior shift, right? Like the fit, healthy dad. I want to, at 50 years old, right? I'm turning 44 in a couple of weeks. But at 50 years old, my kids are going to be almost graduating high school, close to graduating high school. So at 50 years old, like what kind of person do I want to be?
Yeah.
I'm always thinking about that. And I think like the daily behaviors that and I might be going off on a tangent here, but the daily behaviors that we possess, like, and talk about every day to ourselves or to our kids or to our wives or spouses or whatever, our network is what matters. I think that really matters.
Well, there's honestly so many things that you hit on there that I talk about and kind of go through my head regularly.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think to go into today.
Yeah.
But some things that stuck out to me, like the emphasis when you say the word father, and when you talk about the description of the father that you want to be, the impact of that word and how you deliver it is heavy. So there's something more there. And then you also talk about, you're on the SGen D podcast, right? So this is Single Generation X Dad podcast.
Yeah.
And the fact that you had lived with your father primarily after the divorce splitting.
Yeah.
The perspective that I'm always giving is of the dads out there and the individuals who are looking to do that from our perspective right now. But it's interesting to hear the perspective of the child of the single father, and then to hear the resonance in the word father and the pride that you have with that.
Yeah.
Right. I heard that come through, whether you tried to glaze over it a little bit, but it was definitely in there.
Yeah.
Like what does that mean to you? And why is that word or that ideal so impactful, so important?
Yeah, man, I might get a little emotional here, but, so my father, I looked up to like he was a hero, like he was superhuman, right? He was part of my journey on like, I think probably why I built a gym and wanted to do this for a living. I would go to the health club with him when I was like 11, 12, 13 years old. And I would just emulate him. I'm like, you're doing curls on that machine. Like, I'm going to go do curls. Is that how your biceps so big? Like, I would emulate everything he would do. And then now fast forward 40 years, right? And my kids are that age. And I think of like that time in my life. I'm like, that was like some of the most, those were the moments in my life that I remember most, I think, as a child, right? Emulating my dad, or like having that father figure. In a divorced family, that was tough, right? My dad did remarry pretty soon thereafter. My mom stayed single. That was a tough dynamic in the beginning. I tell myself, like, I never want my kids to go through that, right? Not that I can control it, right? Like, divorce can happen at any moment, but like, I'm going to do everything in my power to be the best father, husband that I can and be the best part of the family so I have full control over that not happening on my end of it, and not happening. But I never want my kids to experience that because I experienced it and it was really tough. At the same time, now I get to see my kids, right? And so at 10 and 11, they're at that age, they're just like, they're little sponges, man. They're going to copy everything you do. And my oldest right now is like starting to emulate me in a way that I emulate my dad. So I look at that and I'm like, where's the opportunity here? Where's the lesson, right? What lessons can I give to him? So the lessons are, the ones I'm giving to him right now are like hard work. You could control the outcomes in your athletic success by how much work you put in. We learned this last week. We were 0-8, 0-8.
Okay.
In junior jazz basketball. Okay. My son, Dean, my oldest, is like 11 years old, but he's like 5'6". He's tall. Mama's 6 feet tall, right? Yeah. He's got the height genes. And he's the tallest kid out there, right? And he's an athlete. He's an athletic kid, but he doesn't like basketball as much as soccer, whatever is in his mind, right?
Okay, yeah.
And I'm like, Dean, I had to do this, man. I had to bribe him. Last week's game, I wasn't going to be there because I had to work. And I said, Dean, I'm not going to be there, buddy, but here's the deal. You get 5, 5, and 5. Mom's going to keep score. 5 rebounds, 5 points, 5 assists. Okay. Dad's going to get you whatever size froyo, the frozen yogurt you want to get from Minchies or whatever it was, his eyes lit up. I'm like, okay, I got him. I get a FaceTime call after the game. Yeah. He's like, Papa, you owe me froyo. And it's just like, what? You got 5, 5, and 5? No, I got 7, 6, and 5 or whatever it was, right? Yeah. Or 10, 6, and 5. You got 10 points. And mom telling me like, and grandparents, my in-laws were there, right? The grandparents, they're like, we've never seen Dean move that fast in our lives. Like, what got into this kid? I think it's like, okay, did I bribe him a little bit? Yes. But at the same time, I told him, I know what's inside of you. Like, I know you have these skills, but you're just kind of jogging through, you're just kind of running through the motions and just jogging through practice, jogging through the games. I'm like, you can actually destroy these kids in a good way, destroy. Like you can, I'm like, you can really you get the rebounds and put it back up. And, as a small example, like I thought that was so cool when he lit up and he's like, when I do this thing, I know I'm going to get a cool reward. Right. But now like building off of that is like, okay, now we got to put in just regular work. Right. So like he loves to work out. Both my kids love to work out. And so if I can ingrain into them, like what working out did for me growing up when I was not even a teenager yet or early teen years, just builds confidence. Yeah. Building confidence and knowing like what you have control over. It builds strength, not only your body, your mind. So when I say, going back to like being a father, it's like, I love the saying, like, it's not taught. Like I can only teach my kids so much. Like it's not taught, it's caught. Like they're going to catch the things that I do. So if they see me working out at the gym, and they come with me and they're just like going to hang out or play around or whatever, they'll be like, Papa, I want to do those 4 things you just did. That's called a circuit of exercises. Like we're going to be more like structured. Is that okay, buddy? Like not just going to be jumping over hurdles and stuff. Right. And they've gotten to that point where it's like, it's getting caught now. It's like, I can't just teach them everything and say like, hey, do this, do that. It's more like, hey, I'm doing this today. Like, you want to join me? Sort of thing. And it catches on.
Well, the other thing that is fascinating about working out for me is that the reward, we talk about this idea of looking ahead, and you mentioned decades, but with exercise, like when you really start getting through it, you start to understand that the work you're putting in that day is a very small block that's building this castle, this ideal.
Yeah.
And you start to really understand that the rewards for it are months ahead, a year ahead, 2 years ahead. You really start to see that. And I think that's another thing that maybe as a child that you started to pick up on, right? To realize by putting in that work, that time, that effort and energy, you were building this. And And even though you didn't, like you mentioned, you didn't have the concept of it, you were applying that concept.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that's probably being passed down to the boys right now. They're picking up that same, they're conceptually understanding that we're putting in this work and effort towards building this thing we can't visually see yet, but one day we're going to be glad we did.
Yeah. I'll give another example if I can, like with just being caught and not taught. It's like every opportunity I have, like we do quarterly inspections we have a lot of rental properties. So like whenever I'm doing my quarterly inspections, I'm walking through the properties and replacing the filters and doing this stuff. I'm like, Dean, you come with me. Like they don't have a choice. I'm like, you're going to come with me. They kind of have a choice, right? We'll do the frozen yogurt afterwards or whatever. I'll reward them with something, like I'll pay them. Yeah. But they come with me, right? And they come up and they help me like clear the leaves out of the gutter. They do those little things at the gym, right? I'm like, you want to earn money? You actually got to work for it. Like, we're not going to buy you that game online. Like, you want those shoes, those cool shoes? Like, they're above and beyond. Like, we're going to pay for school shoes, but you can make up the difference. You got to work for it. So I think I heard an entrepreneur say once, like, if you're going to train your kids on anything, train them train them on ownership, like ownership of like how they're going to earn money, how they're going to save money, how they're going to spend money. I think is important. Like as they're growing up and like actually making money, it's like, how much is that are you going to plan on saving? Is it automatic? Like we're starting to teach them these concepts because, at Epic Fitness, they're both employees of ours. They get to come full towels and, help out with cleaning things and doing some of the things that really matter, right, for the business, but they're learning about hard work. Now, can I say that they love it all the time? No.
Well, I mean, that's why we call it hard work. We generally don't want to do with it.
Especially if you're 10 and 11, but the reward is they get the money they want to spend on some of the things that they want, but also it's one of those things where we also take into account, like, we know they're really young too. So it's just one of those things we have to kind of, it's not like they come every day. They might work once or twice a week, right? Mm-hmm. So, but teaching those values of like the value of hard work, the value of like coming with me to do a lot of the menial things that I will still do, just to teach them like, these are the things that we have to do to actually like keep properties up. And I'm not going to pay somebody sometimes to clear gutters when I could teach my son, like, this is what you're going to have to start doing, if you want to take care of some properties, So.
And you're laying the foundation of being an entrepreneur, being a business owner at that level. You're not laying the foundation of that you can do this for someone for X amount of dollars per hour. Right. You're showing them kind of the built-in value of maintaining and getting what you have and taking care of that. Right?
Yeah. 100%.
Curating it.
Yeah.
Curating the business almost.
Yeah. Curating them to be in control of, like, potentially, like, if they want to start their own business or have a business or take over one of ours, like, they have the ability to do that.
These self-development kind of things that you've been talking about, and in particular with the boys, I'd like to go back into the clients in talking about being a personal trainer. For myself, the light bulb went off where I started to understand some of these things as I would sit down and have one-on-ones with clients. Because in conversation with clients, in particular for me, I've been tall and kind of thin my whole life. And typically you're working with people that are generally looking to do weight loss, right? Where you talked about, you hinted on it earlier, that we thought we were going to train other athletes.
Yeah.
And that isn't exactly how it plays out.
Yep.
So with that in mind, like the thing I like to get into is that I learned so much about myself by having conversations, by trying to be open and vulnerable in these discussions with clients so they could meet me at that level. And then I could actually help them and say, like, okay, let's game plan around these things that you struggle with. So while I was doing that and trying to make effectively the sales pitch on why we need to work together and why I need you to open out, all of a sudden I'm having like a self-therapy session where I'm saying these things out loud that I had never said to myself prior, but I did it based on the necessity. But going through that, I've learned so much.
Yeah.
So have you had similar experience in being a trainer and the personal development route in particular? When you start coaching and working with someone else, how much did you start to see that messaging that you were sharing with them and relay it back to yourself and be like, man, these are principles I need to apply, or this helps me understand a little bit more about myself as well?
Yeah. I think in the beginning it was harder. And then as you learn more, ability to like not only judge like somebody else's personality, but also their personality types, if they're more introverted versus extroverted, but also like what their inner fears, desires, and like really what they're looking to achieve. I feel like for me, what's worked as far as like getting into the mind of a client or being able to like share stuff is I could share other stories, right? So we didn't really get to this part, but we actually help a lot of like cancer survivors. And so it's valuable to be able to share my story, right? I, as you know, I was diagnosed with a really rare form of leukemia back in 2015, went through chemotherapy for a couple of years, was in 2017 in remission. Now since then, I go up every 6 months up in Huntsman for checkups. But what's cool about that experience is like, I can share I can kind of go in the hole with them, right? So people, they come in that are like cancer survivors are like, is working out actually the right thing to be doing? Because I heard that like resistance training can be really hard on the body, or like it'd be too much stress. You could recur, have recurrence of like symptoms or whatever. And I'm like, actually, here's my experience. Like my doctors told me if I wasn't strength training, then I probably would have died, or I probably would have been in a different position, right? Of like, if I didn't come in at a certain level like I was at that time, I would have had a much different outcome potentially.
Well, that's a huge one though. I mean, to kind of gloss over, I mean, could you give us a little bit more context of like what was going on in life then? So you're operating the business, right? This is about 4 years into your...
Only about 17, 3 years, about three and a half years.
3 years? Okay,
Yeah.
so 3 years into the business, you at least have a few trainers now.
Yeah,
You have a med person, maybe a salesperson at this point, or no?
Yeah, just me. I was sales.
You were sales?
Yeah.
Okay. So, how'd the discovery occur?
Yeah. I was turning 35 years old, and this is 2015. So it's kind of the next quad of the next Olympic Games. We're going to be 2018. And I'm like, you know what? I'm feeling awesome. Like I was in probably some of the best shape I've ever been in. And I wanted to make a comeback to bobsled. So I was going to do actually a bobsled combine again and actually redo that whole thing from 13 years prior. Yeah. And so I actually was training for a combine test. And so I had to get a sport physical. Long story short, the sport physical didn't go very well. I got blood work done. I actually wasn't recovering very well from my workouts previous to that, like for a month or so. Just was staying really sore, like wasn't normal, right? Like, as an athlete, like this shouldn't be happening.
What were you telling yourself? I'm just getting old or something? Or?
Yeah, like I
gotta work on my diet.
Maybe I should tone down all the sprinting or whatever it was, right? But I ended up getting more tests done, and long story short, I had to go see a gastroenterologist because they're like something's going on with your liver. It's like really inflamed, so they had to do multiple liver biopsies. They caught on one of the biopsies they did. They found that I had this really rare form of leukemia. And so obviously the doctor that gave me calls, my gastroenterologist, he's like, I'm not be able to help you here, but we know a good team of cancer specialists that can help you. And that was one of the hardest moments of my life. Like I got the phone call, getting my oil changed. And
so just as a shift, I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes.
Yeah.
You're feeling some of the best you've ever felt. Your business is operating well.
I could step away and actually train for bobsledding.
Yeah, so much so where you thought you can potentially jump on the Olympic team or be an alternate, get involved in that.
Yeah.
You go through this process and you get a physical and get this kind of feedback, and then find out you have a cancer diagnosis of a rare form that the gastroenterologist is just like, what? Right? The response
is like, we don't see this. Like, what is
how unsettling is that? First of all, right? To get that kind of feedback from a medical professional about this initial diagnosis.
Hugely, like I had all emotions, right? I was sad. I got depressed. I got angry. Like, why me? Right? Like I went through all those emotions. And then when that settled, I'm just like, okay, what do I do next? It's just like, obviously, like, when can I make my next appointment to figure out what actually is going on?
Yeah.
And so that shift went from training at a really high level to like basically like not quitting, but just settling down on that part of it and doing the next fight was, fighting cancer.
Wow.
And during that time, I think that those 2 years were probably, I mean, I could say the toughest part for the business too, because I had to step away a lot. But I was able to like the team that I had at that time. I just remember like nobody was going anywhere. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you're in your business, you have employees that come and go and that happens and people move and you can't control those things. But at that time I had a team that was like, no, man, we got your back. Like, I just remember that being like so amazing, like the team that I had then.
Almost help galvanize them a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it galvanized the whole team. They're just like, we got your back, you know? And so that was like a moment in my life where I knew I would not be able to do it, or I would have shut the doors down at Epic if we didn't have that support. Like I wouldn't be able to do it on my own. Yeah. But to go back to, gosh, what were we talking about before that? Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah.
Reel me back in, man.
Yeah. The idea of we had initially kind of gone off of clients, and then you started to talk about getting the opportunity to work with clients who have been diagnosed with cancer,
sharing your story
and sharing your story and how you could relate to them, and the lessons that you learned through helping someone about yourself as well. Because in helping someone else, you have to be in a really firm, good position. I always use the analogy of if someone's hanging off the edge of the cliff, you don't want to bend over and just extend your arm, because then both of you are going over.
Yeah.
You want to ground yourself, be in a good position to where you can successfully pull them back up.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's part of having like empathy, right? Like that empathy muscle where, you know, could you be comfortable jumping in that hole with them? Right? Probably, but you don't get stuck down there with them.
Yeah.
And I think having the amount of empathy where you structure in a way to have empathy, validate their feelings, be able to, say, in my position, like dealing with a lot of cancer patients coming to us to train, it's like, hey, I've been there. Like in my experience, this is what worked for me. And I think that's powerful, not to be prescriptive, but to say, this is what's worked for me. And I think if you give it a try, let's see what happens, sort of thing. And so that worked a lot with people that either had a cancer diagnosis or had a major health issue. I could relate to that and say, like, I've had major health issues too. This is what I've done, because like you, like I haven't had to deal with obesity, right? I haven't been that an obese, like a lot of our clients come in, and it's hard to have that type of empathy if you haven't been there before. But I think the best way to go about that, because we've dealt with a lot of like very like morbidly obese people and gotten them to a point where they are no longer obese and they're in a great place, is using that empathy muscle, using a validation for like their issues, right? So a lot of it is like not having access to the right, usually it's the right education about nutrition. It's the right education about what type of training they can do safely and effectively at their size. And once we give them those little pieces and little habits, it's really about, in my experience, it's been about small, little, tiny behavior change and shifts. And that's what we train our team on now. Is like not giving somebody the big meal plan or the big structural program that's going to work over the next 10 weeks. It's like, actually, what can you do successfully over the next week that you're a 10 out of 10 confidence level you can do, like drinking an extra glass of water or whatever the thing is. We start with that. We don't start with, hey, you got to cut out all fats or whatever. It's just like, actually, like, we ask them, like, what do you feel like you could do that would be like a big lever that you could pull? They could end up being a bigger lever,
Well, it's that same idea that we've been talking about throughout this, is that notion of these changes in what you're doing or building and laying the foundation for the future. These small blocks, things that may seem insignificant, but are actually necessary, especially like going back to the analogy of the bobsledding and putting in the time of waxing down the sled or setting up the lanes and stuff like that you talked about.
Yeah.
And how that lays the foundation for success and making the difference between a gold or silver medal later on down the road. So the acts of even consuming the additional water is what starts to build them on that progress or that pathway of being that idealistic person they want to be in the future.
Yeah.
Because that person would be consuming more water, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's try and go back and do just a quick recap of today. There's so much. I wish we had spent more time. Honestly, I'd love to. We'll have to plan another sit down in the future, because there were so many topics that you resonated on with me and I think in the audience and things I'd like to talk about as well.
Sure.
I'm glad we were able to at least brush on some of those for sure.
Yeah.
I came with this approach that we were going to stay more just focused on this kind of business and client aspect. But the thing that I learned every time that I sit down or I have conversations with people is the value behind conversation.
Yeah.
And when you take the time to have a conversation and to know someone and to listen to them, the amount of things you get out of it and how it's just like, it's better for everyone. And I know people watching this right now who resonate with that stuff, it's got to hit them. I mean, going back to discussions of fatherhood and the imprinting there with your sons, and the experience you had through the divorced family, and the experience you had with the illness of your mother while you're starting a business and having a newborn child, and the experience of being a cancer survivor and now being able to serve those people. And then generally just the idea of the health and wellness that you brought to the community. And obviously the lives that you've changed of the coaches and the employees and the people you work with. You're such an organized, detailed guy in your systems. You were able to leverage, and there's a reason why all these pieces gravitated toward you. Because one, you needed it, but two, it was like you built a home for it.
Yeah.
And then those pieces, those people found you because they were drawn to you because of what you had put together. So just first of all, I want to thank you because that's just so much. I'm taking so much away from this.
Yeah, man.
But what would we leave just to try and summarize and wrap this up a little bit? What messaging, what things would you leave to those individuals who are looking to try and lay this foundational work for themselves and this idyllic person they want to become? Become entrepreneurs, business people, become leaders within their community, and then how this mindset of all these things that could generally derail. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of the prognosis that you had, the diagnosis that you had, the situations that you went through, a lot of people would have folded. But you went back to this idea from your father and this resiliency that you developed.
Yeah.
So what are some of what if you could possibly wrap that up?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you'd share or just to impress upon someone watching?
Yeah, totally. I love it. I love that. I love these questions. So I'd say first, I'd kind of go back to what we kind of already talked about a little bit, but I want to just touch on this because it makes so much sense to me now when I think of my life in this way. It's like, if people would stop thinking of success in like literally just what can I do in the next 6 months of the year, or think of, let's say, hitting an outcome. Like for me, for years in sports, right? It was like, I have to hit a personal best, or I have to hit this number on this test, or whatever it was, right? Or I have to sprint this fast. And once I do that, then I'll make the team, or then I'll, hit this standard or whatever it is. The win then scenario, or the focusing on an outcome versus focusing on a process or a behavior change. I think that's the first thing. It's like, stop focusing on the outcome. We did that in our last little New Year's challenge. It's like, okay, we're going to do some body comp testing along the way, but we don't want you to focus on the outcome of like in 6 weeks where you might be. We actually want you to focus on the processes and the little small, tiny changes that you did along the way, the small habit changes each week that we ingrained in you along the way that set you to hit that, to hit whatever the goal was, but that not to be an outcome-based goal. Because what happens in an outcome-based goal, I can tell you when Steve Holcomb won that gold medal, and when most Olympic athletes win a gold medal, they get really depressed because they're like, I did the thing, I don't feel much different. Because they weren't focused on the process of getting there, like those small little steps of like, actually, I can still improve after the gold medal and do more to get better at whatever I'm focused on. I think that was a big lesson for me, was like, stop focusing on the outcome and just focus on the process. Because what I'm building now in my life with my kids and with my wife and with my business and with, other things in my life, is I think about, like you said, the person I want to become in a decade, not in 6 months. Like if we could just extend our time horizon a little bit longer, right? And we live in a society where we want everything tomorrow. We want everything done. Like we want a business to be perfect in 1 year.
Yeah.
I've been on this road for over a decade, like going on 11 years and still not perfect. Like it's never going to be perfect. Is it going to be good? Yeah, it's going to be pretty good. Like right now, is it pretty good? It's okay. It's pretty good. But when I think of like the next decade, I'm like, okay, if I could go out a decade, like that's when cool things can happen. But I'm not thinking about next year or next week or next month. So I think outcome, using the process-based approach versus outcome-based approach. And then also we could expand our horizon of our thinking or of what we can accomplish in decades and not just days. That could be really valuable. So it's like, don't write a goal down. If you have a New Year's resolution or goal, don't write a goal down that's going to be like what I want to accomplish this year. You'd be like, here are the things I want to tick off, the behaviors I want to change that I know in 10 years are going to make me a better version of myself or make me 1% better. It's like the example of like Dan John, a great mentor of mine. He told me 1 year, he said, I had a goal 1 year to lose 1 pound and I lost 1 pound. And that was an amazing thing. I'm like, that's really cool. Like, what was your thought behind that? It's like, because I could have gained 20 or I could have stayed the same, but because I lost 1 pound, that's a 1 inch improvement, right? But what if I lost 1 pound every year for 10 years? I'd lose 10 pounds. What kind of person would that make me in a decade, right? So it's like when we work with fat loss clients, it's like, I want to lose 1 to 2 pounds a week. It's like, cool. Like in 52 weeks, you're going to be like between 48 and 96 pounds or 52 and 104 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
Like that would be amazing, right? But you only weigh 164 pounds
Yeah.
or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
To get clear on the goal or to get clear on like the outcome, right? Get clear on not the outcome, but just make it a process-based approach, like a habitual behavior thing.
Becoming a different person.
Yeah. It's a person that you're going to become in 10 years that's going to make the difference. Because the person I was 10 years ago is nothing. It's not even, and you knew me 10 years ago. I'm a different person today, right? Like I'm a different person. I think that like, if I went back to that gym that we both know of and saw some of the people in there, I actually went in there a couple months ago, actually. I did a workout with a client of mine because he works out there too. As I come to a workout, I'm like, awesome. And I saw some of the coaches there still, and they're still on the training floor coaching. I'm like, that's amazing. And nothing against them, but it doesn't seem like they've changed much.
Yeah.
But that's cool for them, right? But that's not the person I'm looking to become in the next 10 years. And it's nothing against them. Like I value that. Like if that's what they want to be, that's awesome. But also like, for me,
But did you see a little bit of yourself? Like if you hadn't gotten kicked out of the nest almost in that instance,
yeah,
you would have potentially been.
That could have been me. Yeah.
Right.
That could have been me still.
And that's not where you're at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
But I think that the other lesson I think that I could give the audience would be like, sometimes you have to force yourself to jump and know that the net will appear, right? Like force the action. Kind of forced action sometimes it's like the hardest action to take. It's like, I don't want to do the uncomfortable thing because it's really uncomfortable and maybe it might be painful. Like maybe stop in that relationship that you don't think you should be in. That's a really uncomfortable thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Or stop or quitting that job and making that jump into entrepreneurship. Like that can be really hard because you have a salary and you've got vacations, you've got all the comfort in that, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's, I think preparation to that stuff's key. Like obviously you're not going to make a rash, dumb decision, but at the same time, you got to think of like, if I don't do this now or in 5 or 10 years, then what will my life look like? Will it look in a mirror like that person I want to become, or will it be the same? Now it's going to be the same and you're okay with being the same. I think that's cool, but I don't think that's
not what you want.
Yeah. If that's not what you want, then yeah. So yeah, to recap, I think like, the 1% improvements to that person you want to become, process-based change versus outcome-based change. Like think about the behaviors you can change and not just the outcome that will happen. Because at the end, the gold medalists aren't very happy. And there's been, documented suicides and documented depression and anxiety from from people that have been at the pinnacle, right? And I've been there before. Like I've been there. It's tough, but when I realized it's not about just the golden thing at the end of the rainbow, it's not about that. The 100 members, right?
Yeah.
Now I have 200 members. I remember 5 years ago, I'm like, when I get to 200 members, man, life's going to be so good. Just like, it doesn't matter what the number is anymore. It just is like, how can we serve more people? How can we help the community more? How can we get more employees that are, and team members that are like actually contributing to this common goal and good that they really believe in? And they believe in that, the mission of what we believe in. When you have that, it gets to be more magical. That's really cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again for today, Ben. This was great for me. I hope it was great for those of you who are watching.
Yeah.
Please come visit Ben at his facility, Epic Fitness. You want to give him a location?
Yeah, Epic Fitness. We're just in Mill Creek City in Utah. So it's 3065 South Imperial Street. It's epicfitnessutah.com on the website.
It's a beautiful facility. Hopefully we'll do some stuff there in the future.
Yeah.
So you can get an idea and see what it's like. Obviously, Ben and his team are amazing. And if you want someone who's well organized, who's detailed, and can put together a program, you're not going to find too many better people in the country. I know Ben personally. I know what kind of man he is. I saw the work he was doing, even just getting ready for this today. You'd definitely be impressed. So thank you for your time today. Again, thank you, Ben.
Thanks, man.
Take care.